The really fresh, nice ones, they tend to have a lot of sugar. If you look at fat-free dressings, they have even more because they're replacing that fat taste with sugar instead. So that's some of those little tricks out there. In terms of portion sizes, going back to meals, like I said, it's individualized, but there should be carbohydrates at every meal and snack in my recommendations and based on the majority of the most solid research out there. Those carbohydrates will go into a little bit more detail about which ones we should be choosing or shouldn't be choosing, or should be choosing less often, I should say. I never recommend that you completely cut a food out unless you have an allergy or intolerance to it. I mainly focus on, well, if you like the food but it's not the healthiest option, let's just eat it less often. So I tend to recommend on average at a meal about 30 grams of carbs, but that kind of varies from person to person. Some people need as much as 45. If you're athletic, sometimes you even need more. And some people need as little as maybe 15. But I wouldn't go below 15 grams of carbs at a meal.
So that's 30 grams per meal.
Per meal. And we'll get more into like all of that in a little bit. So carb-containing foods, you guys mentioned a lot that are on this slide. Breads, crackers, cereals, pasta, rice, grains, starchy vegetables like potatoes, corn, and peas. A lot of the time we forget corn and peas are more of a carb than a green leafy vegetable. So beans and legumes, they're good protein sources, but they're also high in carbohydrates. Milk, soy milk, and yogurt also are good amounts of carbohydrate. That lactose component, or in those other forms, there is a different type of sugar, natural sugar, that is making them a little sweeter. Fruits and fruit juices, there's a big difference. Sweets such as cakes, cookies, ice cream, jam, jelly, the things that when a lot of us think of carbs, that's what we think. So, I'm going to start with the misunderstood. So some common misconceptions about carbs, and just that little image, if it's a little blurry for you to read, it says, "Yo dog, I heard you on ketosis, so we put meat on top of meat and covered it in fat so you can lose weight." So that's going to go into this misconception that low carb means healthy. Because a lot of people say, okay, I'm cutting out carbs, I can eat whatever I want. So then they're having bacon, and they're having high-fat meats, and they're having all these other things because, oh, I'm cutting out carbs, so I'm good. And that can cause a lot of health problems really fast. So some other common misconceptions are that all carbs are bad or make you fat. That's not the case. In excess, they can turn to fat, but not in the right amounts. So only breads and grains contain carbs. That's a common misconception I hear really often. We forget that there's other carb-containing foods out there. Low carb or no carb diets are healthy for me. I'll put a caveat on that. There are very few cases where some people do better on a low carb diet. I personally don't recommend it unless what I've been using with someone is not working and their body has a degree of intolerance to carbs. But I've never, working with anyone, recommended a low or no carb diet. The only other time that I've seen it be really beneficial is a very strictly medically monitored diet for individuals with epilepsy. So all carbs are created equal. A lot of us think carbs, sugar, bad. Carbs cause inflammation. That's something that I've heard a lot of people thinking out there recently.
But is the sugar that causes inflammation?
It can, but directly just eating those carbs or those simple refined sugars, unless it's in excess, is not a direct correlation with inflammation. So sugar-free equals no carb. That is not the case. Just because something is sugar-free means it doesn't have added sugar. But it doesn't mean that there isn't a natural carbohydrate component to that food. So that's something to keep in mind when you're buying your sugar-free food items. And also sugar-free tends to be higher in fat, just like fat-free tends to be higher in sugar. Have any of you guys heard those or had those things kind of taught to you in the past? Yeah. Heard at least one of those before. Okay. So the good. Whole grain, high fiber carbs tend to be the more complex carbs. So like we were saying, in general, complex carbs tend to be your healthier choices and your healthier options. But we have some simple carbs like fruits that are also healthy for us. It's a quick sugar, but it's combined with a fiber. So that's why fruit juice versus fruit is different, because fruit juice, you're just getting the quick sugar, whereas when you eat a full piece of fruit, you're getting the fiber with it, which gives it that more complex feel to it. So that's really important. So the next thing, it's the most easily accessible form of energy for your brain and your muscles. So that's something that a lot of us tend to forget, especially when we're thinking about this concept of low carb, is that if we're exercising and we're doing all of those active things, or we're learning or working in a really strongly mind-based job, and we don't eat carbs, we are going to have that brain fog. We're not going to really have that energy to get ourselves going at the beginning of the day. So normally your body needs about 100 calories from carbs to get your brain moving in the morning. So that 100 calories, that's going to put us just over 15 grams of carbs if we're kind of connecting those two numbers together. So without that, our brain's just foggy. If you've ever tried to go to work or tried to exercise without eating first or without having some carb, your body's just like, I'm not going to focus. I just don't want to start. So emotional stability is another thing that a lot of us forget about. If we go really low carb, number one, if you guys have ever heard the term hangry, I think I mentioned it at my last presentation if you were here. If we don't have carbs, a lot of the time we get that little bit of a hypoglycemic feeling, so low blood sugar, where we get a little bit shaky, we can't think straight, we snap like that. Someone tries to talk to us and they're like, oh, never mind, eat something. And so that, a lot of time when you get to that point, you need that quick carb, like she was talking about earlier with exercise, because sometimes your body just needs that quick sugar to replenish if it's gotten down to a low blood sugar state. Also with emotional stability, when we have that balance between carbs, protein, fat, our body uses those carbs in the process that works with serotonin production and those other mood hormones. So if we don't have the carbs and we can't properly produce and make those hormones, a lot of the time that comes with a lot of depression, anxiety, inability to control that mood stability. So, blood glucose stability when balanced throughout the day. So if you are a diabetic, or even if you're not, basically our blood sugar, we want to kind of go in this nice ebb and flow throughout the day, right? If we have a simple sugar with nothing else, we're going to get this high spike and this low drop really quickly. Also, if we eat something in the morning and then we don't eat a carb or really much else for another 6 hours, we're going to get this a little better, but then it's going to drop low. If we have a high enough fiber containing carb and we're eating consistently every 3 to 4 hours and have some degree of a carb component, we'll kind of get this nice wave where it's balanced. Our body knows it's kind of in between these nice lines here. And when we have that blood glucose stability, it results in metabolic efficiency. That meaning our body's working at its best metabolic rate. So it's using energy the best way it can, as opposed to storing more than it needs to. That being said, if we maintain blood sugar stability, we have the easier ability to do things like lose weight or maintain weight. If we cut out carbs and we're not eating very consistently, that's when a lot of those things happen where we get into that starvation mode. When our body's in starvation mode, it stores everything and anything you put into it because it doesn't know when you're going to eat again. So if we eat every 3 hours, for example, I've had clients that were eating a meal a day and they could not lose a pound. The second we added a couple more meals in there, even if they're light, and got that more metabolic efficiency and our body kind of kick-started and moving, they lost weight. Yes?
I once worked with a lady at 10 o'clock break. She was eating a couple of donuts and complaining that she was skipping breakfast in order to lose weight, but she just couldn't make it to lunch. She was eating donuts.
So the story that he just told was that he had met a lady that, she was trying to lose weight and was skipping breakfast to do so, but then couldn't quite make it to lunch, so was eating donuts. So that's something that a lot of people, it happens. If we skip that carb at breakfast, our body wants those quick, simple sugars because it needs carbs. So that's when we crave those sweets and all of those foods, and that's where we ravenously attack those quick, simple carbs and eat too much of them. If we balance it throughout the day, it can prevent a lot of that overeating.
Can you repeat how often are you supposed to eat? Like every 3 to 4 hours?
3 to 4 hours on average. And a lot of the times, if your body gets kind of in that habit of every 3 to 4 hours, your body will tell you. Like my body personally, it knows every 3 to 4 hours, unless I've overeaten at a meal, it's like, okay, time to eat again. I don't care where you are, what you're doing, it's time to eat. And if I don't, then I go into that, oh my gosh, I just need to eat whatever's in front of me 2 hours later when I push it back.
You become emotionally unstable?
I get a little grumpy. I do get a little grumpy if someone's trying to talk to me and I haven't eaten. I'm just like, I can't answer your question right now. I can't think straight. Like, I need my food. One second.
I always get a craving at night.
Okay.
That's my biggest problem.
So how far at night would you say that is? Like, right after dinner, later in the evening?
I have my big meal at noon.
Okay.
My largest meal.
Okay.
I try and have it at noon and then eat something light.
Okay.
But even if I do that, boy, I just get the munchies so bad.
Yeah, so sometimes kind of having a more even-sized meal at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then having some snacks, or even if you're going to have a lighter dinner and you're going to be up for 3 or 4 hours after that, having a snack, a small snack, before you go to bed.
But nothing satisfies it.
Okay.
I need crunch. Crackers,
Yeah.
chips. I need that
Yeah.
crunch.
Potato chips.
Yeah. So she's talking about a little bit this concept of hungry for carbs and those delicious, quick, kind of either savory or sweet, pick your poison, taste you want at the end of the evening. So a lot of the times that comes with this concept of tired and energy. So when you're tired, your body sometimes gets a little bit confused. It says, okay, I need energy. If you're not going to give me sleep, I know food gives me energy. So then you try to eat food to compensate for that energy that you don't have when you're tired. But your body doesn't produce the same energy from food that it does from sleep. So a lot of the times we get that, okay, I'm eating, but it's not satisfying what my body wants.
That's what I have.
Mm-hmm.
She mentioned popcorn. I love popcorn.
Yeah.
But then, I grated some corn
him as carcinogenic if you pump it